All right, well, I did it. So, this video has been on my mind actually for quite some time, and this is honestly gonna be a pretty raw and just transparent kind of overview as to how I really got to where I am now. And when I say this, I mean as an academic point of view, just because there's so many different things that can happen in one's life. It definitely was the case for mine. There was many things that happened in my life. With all that aside, I just wanted to kind of focus more so on the academic journey that I went through to get to this paper. Just fun fact, that paper actually isn't even anything. It's just a piece of paper that they give you when you get your diploma, at least at my school at Rutgers. I'm sure other schools probably give you the actual paper. However, that wasn't the case for me. But that's besides the point. I really just want to get super to the point, just so you kind of all know what to expect. And for people who know me and watch this, I guess have a little bit of an appreciation for what I did throughout my, not really 4 years, but through my 4 years. So to start off, I started in 2016. I graduated high school in June of 2016. I started at Rutgers University as a physics and chemistry double major. However, I don't think I was actually declared a major at that point, but that was like in mind what I had. 2016 comes around, you know, fall semester starts, and I had a lot of this freedom. It was just a whole bunch of a change of lifestyle, really. Just because, you know, my high school was local, I was going to school every day, and I lived home with my parents, so it's like school, any extracurriculars, and then come back home to my parents. Here, when I started in the fall, it was a little different just because I had my own room with another person, a person that was the same age as me, and then I was living in a building filled with people the same age as me, and, you know, had aspirations very similar to mine at the time. I know I still keep in touch with some of those people, however, not really too much. So I lived on Cook Douglas, that is one of the 4 campuses that is part of the New Brunswick campus. I know that's a little confusing, but I guess a quick rundown is the Rutgers New Brunswick campus is divided into 4 sub-campuses, if that makes sense. And so it's just that ginormous, if you will. It's not really that big.
That's what she said!
At least once you're a student, it doesn't feel like that big. I was living on one of the 4 sub-campuses called Cook Douglas. This campus is kind of out of reach. Like, there's not a lot of stuff really there. A lot of the music and dance classes are there just because the School of Performing Arts, I believe. I was about to say the music school, but it's because I always associate this school with music, but anyway, that's besides the point. So it's called Mason Gross. That's where one of the schools of Rutgers is located, so a lot of the classes are there. However, the running joke at that time was that the building that I was living in was the engineering rejects, just because all of us wanted to be engineers. They were accepted already into the School of Engineering, but I was not actually admitted into the School of Engineering. I was admitted into the School of Arts and Sciences. Hence, I had originally plans to be chemistry physics double major and not chemical engineering, which is the degree that I graduated with. Sorry for going on these tangents, but I'm really trying to be as transparent as possible just so you have kind of an overview as to the path that I really took and like all the like curves that really happened in my life academically. Again, this is fall 2016 and I meet all these people, and again, it's such a big lifestyle change just because I'm with all these people and I have really no responsibility essentially, right? Like there's no sense of responsibility, if that makes sense, just because like you're 18 years old, 17, 18 depending, and you're coming in with all these people that are the same age as you, and you could literally do whatever you want. If you don't want to go to class, you don't go to class. If you want to go to class, you can go to class. However, you know, when you do go to class, those professors are not like on your ass, on your butt. You know, they're not on you to make sure that you're doing your homework, that you're not studying, that you're not up to date with certain chapters and stuff like that. It's really on you. I'm sure like in high school, teachers probably, you know, try and scare you away with how it is and whatever. I'm telling you from my experience as a recent grad, for the most part, it's true. You know, it's very fast paced just because they'll go over a certain topic, and you know, you'll do 1-2 chapters a day in the textbook and then a couple problems, hopefully. That's not always the case. And then once you're done with that, you're done with the day, or maybe even the week. And then once you're done, it's up to you to, you know, either catch up in terms of, did I really catch what happened that week or did I not? Again, as an 18-year-old, that's your responsibility, and it's a really big change because you're not used to having so much responsibility on you right off the bat, especially after just a couple months ago you were in high school messing around with just your friends and having senioritis and stuff like that. It's a really big change, right? I did not have the, I guess, capacity to really adapt so well at the time. I just took advantage of the fact that I had all this free time and I could have done whatever I wanted. I didn't really have a strong sense of balance in terms of how much fun I could have and like all the work that I could be doing, as well as just going to class, like just flat simple. I cannot stress enough how strong just going to class is. In the sense that even though you may not be really catching on what's going on, you could really hear, you know, certain words, certain phrases, and those subtle things that you listen to and maybe even visually see, it adds such a huge factor in terms of recollection of memory and like just retention as well, like long-term retention. It goes a long way. I wish I had not done that mistake my first year in terms of just flat out skipping like all my classes. In result of that, just because I was skipping all my classes, I wasn't caught up with any of the material. I didn't know how to do the homework. I resorted into, you know, cheating, asking my friends for help, like essentially having my friends do my homework for me, and it just didn't work out. I'm sure if you are a college student, you know, some people use Chegg and some people use other, like just Googling stuff, and now with ChatGPT, that's like a huge thing. But in long term, I'm telling you, obviously from that year, it just doesn't help you, just because like, yes, you know, you may tell yourself like, oh, you know, it's helping me because like I don't know how to do these problems, so it's like it's doing it for me so that I know how to do it. But in long term, it's not really gonna help you, just because it's like you may think you actually know what you're doing, like as you're following the steps, but it's like you're not consciously having your brain kind of like do the hard work to like remember the steps and stuff like that. So it really goes a long way, but again, that's up to you. The moral of the story as that 2016 is that I failed my first semester. I essentially, you know, went to my finals and stuff like that, my midterms, and I failed all of them just because I was completely lost. I was really trying to catch up in my own way, which in hindsight didn't even work out. I failed my first semester. I don't remember the exact grades. I'm sure at the end we can go over my transcript so that we could actually see, I guess, step by step, or what was the progression during each of the semesters. So the next semester comes along, and this is now the spring semester. I was pretty bummed out, obviously. You know, I had come from high school being like top 50 in the school, having such a high GPA, and it was such a big difference for me just because of the fact that, you know, I was getting F's, like I was literally failing. I think I got like 1B. I don't even remember what it was. Again, we'll check. I don't even remember what my grades were, but I did fail. Second semester comes along, and you know, my parents are asking me like, how am I doing in school? And you know, I lied to them. I didn't want to be that kid that tells them that they failed. It was a hard thing to do just because like I had to live a lie. I didn't want to disappoint them. In the end, you know, I ended up just disappointing myself, but we'll come to that. Second semester comes along, and I tell myself I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna fix my habits. I'm gonna go to class. I'm gonna do all this stuff and whatever. However, it didn't change. You know, I was still surrounded by the same friends. I was having too much fun, just like gaming and not going to class, sleeping in. Like, you know, I would have like an 8 a.m. and I just wouldn't go because I'm like, oh, like it's fine. They post the lecture notes online. Like I'll look at it later. Long story short, same thing happened. I was retaking Calc 1. I was taking the second half of Physics 1 for us at Rutgers. It splits into Analytical Physics 1A and Analytical Physics 1B. And so I was taking now the B part, and some of the stuff that you learn in the B part is from the A part, and there's also a bit of calculus that's involved. However, it's not super like in-depth, but still it was really handy if you knew how to do integration, and just if you had a somewhat strong foundation of derivation, where a lot of people from high school had taken maybe calculus or at least surfaced it, so they were a little more familiar. However, I was very weak with derivatives and integration just because I had failed calculus, like I said. Second time comes around when I was taking calculus, and I just thought to my head, I don't know why, but my ego was just off the charts for some reason. Like I was already familiar with the topics, so the people who were taking Calculus 1 for the first time in the spring, I was just like, oh my gosh, how do you guys not know this? Like, I've seen this before. I didn't say this verbally, but just in my head, and I just thought I was too cool. Just huge mistake. I started not going to class just because I still had that mentality, and then there was a point where I literally just pretty much gave up because I just felt like I couldn't do it. Like I was already in such a bad spot. It was like, it's so much work to come back from how bad I did from my first semester, and then also how bad I was doing already in the second semester. So I was like, it's just too late. Like there's no point. I finished the second semester and I'm like 90% sure I finished the term with a 0.4 average, and then overall I don't remember what the overall was, but that was pretty much the GPA that I had coming out. And because I should also mention I was in academic probation after my first semester because I had failed. So now that I'm in academic probation, I need to not only do an additional class, but I need to catch up in my GPA so that I don't get kicked out. Since I essentially did the latter, I didn't keep my grades up, I got kicked out. I left for 2 years. I essentially did nothing the following year. That's a really long story on its own, but I essentially did nothing the second year. And then third year, I kind of came clean with my parents and I told them what had happened. It was a really big disappointing point in my life just because like I said, I was living this whole lie and they trusted me and I lost this trust. I just felt so bad about myself, about everything. It was like, how could I have done that? During this whole time, I spent that 1 year doing nothing. So the academic year was gone. So I essentially did nothing for 1 year. And then the following year, this was now approaching what would have been my third technical year, starting from 2016. I came clean right before September came around and I was just like, what do I do? And that whole academic year was just a lot of reflection as to like my mistake, essentially. Thankfully, I was able to enroll in a community college right before the semester started. And I think I was a little late, but I was like only 1 week late. However, once I started at the community college, I was actually working at my parents' store as well. They had a produce store in Jersey City. I was doing that whenever I wasn't in school. So whenever I wasn't in school, I would wake up early in the morning, I'd go help my dad, help my parents, and just do that. And so it was just tedious, if anything, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do just because of the fact that I got so used to being so lazy from my first year and technically what would have been my second year, but I just didn't do anything. But again, there was a lot of reflection. I didn't have a car at the time. I was taking the bus from my hometown to Jersey City, and that was like a 20-30 minute bus ride early in the morning. During those rides, I just remember distinctly how much I reflected on my mistakes, and I would think to myself, I'm like look at me. Like I just felt like I was such in a low spot. And when I look back, I start to think about it. I tell people, if you're contemplating about taking a year off or semester off, you should do it. Just because in that time when you're not at school, this time enables you and gives you a lot of opportunity to reflect on whether it is you really want to do school, whether you don't want to do school, and also just clear up some of the things that maybe are conflicting inside of you. This point, this low point in my life was a really big turning point, not just academically, but like in my life, like genuinely. I think there was a lot of discipline that was instilled in me during this time. I was attending this community college, these classes. I was taking Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, data structures, and other computer science courses. I was, remembering how good I was. I was like I'm not smart. I'm not like some prodigy, but I just remember how things click. Again, I'm not a prodigy though. Like it's not that I am a master and like it just magically comes to me with like some hieroglyphics and I just see through it. I just remembered, I was getting these good grades and I was just like, why did I do that at Rutgers? Like why did I just give up when I have all this potential? I was capable of doing. I did 2 semesters there. After I did those 2 semesters, I was looking into how to get readmitted into Rutgers after being kicked out. The procedure is, and this might be similar for other schools, but for Rutgers, when you get kicked out, you are allowed to take 2 summer courses to be readmitted. However, you need to ensure that, I believe it's either a 2.5 or a 3.0. But anyway, summer comes along. I finished all these courses that I did at community college in hopes of transferring those over. Thankfully they did, and I passed with flying colors. The downside is that the GPA doesn't transfer over, so that's one thing. But I wasn't too worried. I was mainly worried about the credits just so that I can kind of catch up on time a little since I was already behind. Intro to philosophy and art appreciation. Philosophy, I believe I got a B+ or something like that, or B. I don't really remember, but I did that, and then I was readmitted, and so I was now coming into the School of Arts and Sciences again. So this is now fall 2019. I essentially had to start from scratch. I had to start with my terrible GPA that I ended with and work from there. And so this was, again, the huge turning point that I had, because starting in 2019, I was essentially a freshman again. And so at this time, I was like 20.
You're 20?
Almost 21 or something like that. I don't remember. I could do the math, but whatever. You know, I was surrounded by a lot of these kids that were like 17, 18 because they were just starting as their first year in 2019, whereas I was already 20, 21, repeating my first year essentially. It was a little embarrassing at first, and it was not something that I was really comfortable with. It was just something that I had to deal with. And it was kind of the thing that was in my head where I was just like, it's my fault that I'm in this position. It was just a lot of acceptance, really, not really a denial thing at this point. You know, I was taking Calc 1, Analytical Physics 1A. I was taking all pretty much the same classes that I was taking as a first year. I was retaking them in hopes that I would get a better grade and replace the grade, because Rutgers has a policy that you are allowed to take or retake a course, and then if you do better on the subsequent retake, so for example, if I got a D my first semester in Calc 1, but then I get a B in Calc 1 the following semester, I can replace that grade. You cannot take, for example, like Calc 2, like if I took Calc 2 and I got like a C, like I can't go and now take Calc 1 because I already took Calc 2. And it shows that I have the capability of solving Calc 1 and 2, so it's like, why would you retake Calc? I don't know, but anyway, I retook the class. Well, classes. I retook a lot of classes, specifically the ones that I failed, just in hopes that I can kind of mend and like repair my terrible GPA, just because there were a lot of these easier courses that I could have fixed by retaking them and hopefully getting a better grade. I did that, and I don't remember the numbers specifically. Spring 2020 comes along. I believe I'm now taking Organic Chemistry 1, and COVID hits. You know, we have this whole weird situation with COVID. It's just like, what's going on? You know, obviously this was a really weird time for everyone. I will say for sure, it was kind of like a clutch up. As you may know, COVID teaching and online classes kind of benefited the students just because of the fact that there was a lot more leeway in terms of how grading was done and overall assignments. And obviously there were certain workarounds to, you know, combat challenges in terms of exams and stuff like that. And, you know, props to the professors and to all of the staff that really try to make it work out in terms of, you know, replying to emails and just overall resources so that we were able to kind of learn. However, I'm sure you could ask other people and they'll probably tell you that it was very challenging, and, you know, there were certain topics that were learned, or rather taught, during that time frame that are not so strong, just because of the fact that it was such a weird time period and it was really hard to really learn effectively. However, that first year back, so fall 2019, spring 2020, I didn't do too hot. I did have strong motivation though, and I was like, I can do this, and I really pushed through. However, I did much better than failing, and that was a really big step. You know, it wasn't like I just passed with A's and B's like I did at community college, which is understandable, right? Because community college level, I think, is a bit lesser than a university level. But that's not to also say, you know, that community college should not be an option. If anything, I advocate for people to go to community college just so they kind of have that stepping stone in between and kind of get a feel for what a university level course really is. And so you also save a lot of money, and looking back, I really wish I had done community college for my first 2 years as opposed to jumping straight into a 4-year college. COVID hit, and then we were all online learning and whatever, and it was such a weird time period, and it's honestly a blur. So I'm not really gonna count that, but we had the benefit of getting a pass-fail, or rather a pass-no credit, which is even better, if you will, just because of the fact that a no credit does not hurt your GPA. It essentially means you failed, but you don't get the credit for it, nor does it count as an F in the GPA. So it was like a win-win almost. But let's say, for example, you got a C and you don't want to see a C on your transcript, you could make it a pass instead of, you know, having a C. So we had that going for us, and so we can see my transcript and we can actually go over the amount of P's that I got, specifically in like Calc 3 and like Orgo 2. Those were really hard courses, and Rutgers math and chemistry is like notoriously known for being really hard. It's just, it was a blessing, honestly, I guess, if you call it that. But yeah, that happened. And then Junior year comes along, so this is now the third year. I guess technically I don't know what year, but I essentially count my 2019 as my freshman year, just because this is kind of where everything really shifted. And so it's also important to note that in this COVID era, like as I was finishing my sophomore spring, so before going into my junior fall, I had applied to transfer from School of Arts and Sciences to the School of Engineering because I wanted to switch into chemical engineering, which is originally my plan. I wanted to do chemical engineering. And so I shifted into the transferred into the School of Engineering, and I declared a double major in chemical engineering and physics. I believe I also at the time was doing a double minor of mathematics and computer science, which, spoiler alert, I dropped the CS double minor. Junior year comes along, and I am excited to be back on campus because we were granted the permission to be back on campus and live back on campus after a really weird period during COVID. It was kind of nice to just, meet other people, especially since I was now considered an upperclassman, and I felt like I was ready to kind of go out there and meet new people, especially in my major, just because now the classes that I'm taking are major specific. So it would have been a nice change. So junior year comes along, and it was really rough. The classes that we were taking were something. I had a kind of rough junior fall, junior fall. Junior spring was a little better, but junior fall, I did have some trouble. Oh no, sorry. No, it's actually my junior spring that I had trouble with, not my junior fall. It was just because the classes were kind of difficult, to be honest. I mean, it's somewhat of an excuse, but I want to blame COVID just because there was a lack of work ethic during COVID, and admittedly, there were people, including myself, that would turn on their lectures and then just go back to bed because they were really early. And that was just kind of how COVID learning really was, and that's the truth, honestly. And so with that in mind, junior fall comes along, and I'm meeting a lot of people in my major just at certain events. There was one event in particular called Coffee with the Professors, where we got to hang outdoors just because of like the whole social distancing stuff and whatnot, and I got to really meet a lot of different peers in my major, people that were one grade above me, and also just other professors in the department, and kind of just really get a feel for the chemical engineering department as a whole. So it was really nice. It was really good just because I felt like I had people to turn to, specifically professors that I could really turn to. Not necessarily share my story, but go to for advice or just support in general. And it was just a really good thing that I wish I had my first year in 2016. Another thing that really helped as well was just joining organizations, student-run organizations. One of them on campus was the Rutgers SHE organization. So that is the Society of Hispanic Engineers. This was an organization that I wish I had done my first year in 2016 as well, just because of the fact that they really, welcomed me with open arms and provided me with a lot of experiences and lessons and just overall advice that I think has shaped me professionally, as well as a bit academically, going into my later years. They really helped me out a lot with just everything, and I met a lot of good people as well over there when I was at the Rutgers SHE organization. And not only that, but I was also part of another org called Rutgers Chemicar, and so that is a chemical engineering organization, although they do take other majors. So there are some people that are biomedical, electrical, mechanical, or something like that. However, it's predominantly chemical engineers, as the name implies. CHEM-E-CAR, so chemical engineering car, I guess. Okay, I have no idea if this is the same frame. I kicked my stand, so it moved. But anyway, I have no idea what I was saying too, because I was busy trying to fix this. But anyway, Chemicar. So I met a lot of cool people, and I just felt more like a college student, honestly. And it felt really good just because it was at this time I was already now 21, 22 or something like that. I felt young again in a weird way, if that makes sense. I know I wasn't so far off, but it was maybe I was 22, 23. No, I was 22, 23, yeah, because I'm now 24 turning 25. So I was 23, 24. And so, I'm a couple years older than these people, and, overall, I didn't let that get to me, and I still wanted to feel like I fitted in an appropriate way, obviously. I just wanted to feel like I was a college student. I didn't want to feel like an outcast. Not that anyone really even knew my academic history. I still just felt sometimes out of place. And I will say, even during my last few years, I still kind of felt like that, but that's okay. My junior classes happen. So junior spring, like I said, comes along, and there was one class in particular that really kind of kicked my butt, but that's just kind of how college is sometimes, and you gotta really push through. And I will say one of the things that really helped me as a student is just having friends in the same classes as you, in the same major, that yes, you should definitely be struggling together, but make sure that you guys can, you know, work stuff out together, just because it's such a strong thing, and it just really helps motivate you as a person overall, and just, you know, push through to complete your degree. And so there was a lot of different friend groups that, you know, I was part of, that I would like to think that I was a part of them, but you know, I can't emphasize enough rather how strong it is to have a good friend group and just a support group that is there of the same age. You know, like there, you can definitely reach out to people that are, you know, older than you. It may be your parents, it may be godparents, cousins, professors, or anything like that, but having people of the same age as you that you can turn to and kind of just, you know, relate in terms of like same problems. And it doesn't even have to be in the same major. You know, there could be people that are same age as you that are maybe in an organization that you're in, and you know, you kind of just share these problems, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, me too, whatever. It was great as a junior year, especially coming back from COVID. I got to meet a lot of these new people. A lot of people got to know me, I feel like, as opposed to me meeting them, just because so many people knew me and my name, and I was just like, who are you? Like, have we met? And that was a lot of the times the case. Then senior year comes along, and then I continued branching out and just trying to take life to the fullest. And the reason why was because during that summer, June 23rd of 2022, got into a serious accident. I'm not going to touch into detail about that, but I was essentially driving in the highway, and I got hit from a car that was essentially flying towards my face because of a truck. That's the long story. It sounds a lot worse when I say it like that, but that's essentially what happened. Thankfully, I did not sustain any major injuries, but it was very painful. I was bleeding, but again, nothing major. But yeah, that happened during the summer, and I was working at an internship. I was working at a pharmaceutical company called Air Techniques, and it's a company that involves with consulting and manufacturing, as well as some sales for their product, which are fluidized beds. So they specialize in a lot of fluidized bed manufacturing. So I got the pleasure of working with Ed Godek, and he was head of the pharmaceutical, oh my gosh, I for some reason cannot even remember the name. He worked alongside me, and he just taught me everything he knew, and you know, I had my own summer project to work on. You know, one of the big things that I wish I had done earlier was just applying for internships a lot sooner, just because it's such a tedious process and it's a lot. But had I known that I could apply right as a freshman, you know, I definitely would have. It's so invaluable. It's such a big thing to have on your resume, just having that one work experience. I mean, it really opens up a lot of opportunity for the future for those who, you know, specifically want to work in industry. So anyway, senior year comes around, and grades were picking up from after COVID. I'm still working on getting that 3.0. I believe I actually got Dean's List. Yeah, that happened, and then it was super exciting because it was like proof that I was capable of getting back up there. However, it was not over. Just because I was improving, I didn't want to slack off and, you know, kind of lay back a little. I still pushed forward, and you know, I was majoring in physics and chemical engineering, and so these classes were not something that I could really just lay back in. Now coming into senior year, you know, we're now taking senior level classes, upper level classes, if you will. They're different. They're just a lot more challenging. They're very specific in terms of material, like the detail in the material, specifically with one of my classes, biochemical engineering. Really tough class. I think that was a class that I did pretty mediocre in, to say the least. I really thought I was gonna fail that class, but you know, I pushed through as hard as I could for the final. I didn't do too hot, but you know, I definitely studied for the final, just because like I was noticing how challenging the material was and stuff like that. And then we also had process lab, so that was a 5-hour lab course that we have multitude of labs, and you essentially learn how to become a process engineer. Just overall develop fundamental skills for laboratory, you know, purposes. I was kind of disappointed just because I thought I had done better. I got a C+ in the class. I was really hoping that I got at least a B. You know, it is what it is, and I'm sure there's a reason why I got the grade that I got. I never really consulted as to why I did get the grade that I got, but that was just how it turned out. I kept pushing through. I think That semester, however, was actually one of the semesters I performed the least in after, you know, coming back in 2019. It might have just been just because like I was starting to lose, not necessarily motivation, but the energy was like about 21 credits every semester. And it's a lot, you know. I'm like hearing these other people's schedules and they're like taking like 14, 16 credits, like 4 classes, and I'm taking like 6, 7 classes, and it was a lot. You know, there were days where I just didn't get sleep. I'd be running on 2 hours of sleep doing my homework, and then like honestly, like there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes that no one knows. Even I don't know how I pulled through with some of the stuff that I've managed to pull through with. I'm thankful that I managed to push through. You know, even though I had this one semester where I did pretty poorly in, I really came back my last semester. I was now taking senior design, process lab part 2, E&M, electromagnetism. I was taking a math course, probability course, if you will, some other courses. I really pushed through. You know, even though it was that final push and, you know, senioritis was kicking in, I did not want to give up. You know, I would always think back to 2016 and how 2019 was for me to come back, and I never stopped pushing through. You know, there were times where I contemplated whether or not I should be doing what I'm doing, whether what I'm doing is right in terms of academically. Even though I had, you know, all this reflection during that time frame back in 20 whatever, I constantly am reflecting even to this day, right? And I feel like that's a really big part of developing as a person. I feel like without that, I don't think I would have been able to push through. Yes, you may be an overthinker, but sometimes those moments that you're thinking can really change into an answer with some thought. But anyway, I think the moral of the story, and you know, if there's something that you need to take out of this, or what you should take from this rather, is that, and I know this is going to be cliche, but I cannot emphasize how much, or how many times rather, people always told me like, oh my gosh, Yoshi, you're so smart, like you're doing chemical engineering and physics and a math minor, like you must be a genius. Or like people are like, oh, what's your major? And I tell them and they're like, oh, you're smart. And I'm like, you know, I always say the same answer. Always. And it's true. I tell them no, I'm not. Because I'm not. Hopefully my autofocus does not freak out again. Anyway, I always say the same answer, and I say that I'm not. I'm not smart. I'm not some genius. I'm not some prodigy. It doesn't come easy to me. And I said this before in the video. It's just that this is something that I worked for. Sure, I didn't work as hard. I could have definitely put in more effort. Definitively, I could have. And I know that. But I definitely put in work. I put in work to get to where I am. Had I put in more of what's left, I definitely could have done better. 100%. The point is that if you are determined to make a change, then you need to stand up and do something about it. Because even though I was disappointed in myself after the mistakes I made, I was doing a lot of reflection, right? Yes, you can reflect, but that doesn't mean just be upset or mad or cry even. You need to shake those emotions off and make something out of it. And that's what I did. I pushed through despite the obstacles that were in my way. There are gonna be many obstacles in your way. There were many in mine. Like I had a car flying through me. That's a literal obstacle. Besides that, right, you know, there's going to be other metaphorical obstacles, right? Whether it's family related, friend related, boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, there's gonna be a number of things. Honestly, there's an unlimited amount of things that could possibly happen, that could come in your way. But don't make them into excuses, and don't let them stop you from getting to where you want to be. Because had those obstacles changed my course to my goal, I probably would have changed that goal. One of the things that I am stressing is if you have this goal, don't be steered off by either your friends or family. And if you're really determined, then you can do it. Because I was told by people that I was not able to do it, to get to a degree, to get to a double major in the 2 majors that I am now. But I told myself that I will do it. That willpower, that is enough to really push you far. However, that's not all, right? Like you can just think about it, but that's only half the way. Now it's up to you to push through and get to where you want to be. So that is pretty much my entire story. This is a really long video. I'm gonna have to edit this like I don't know when, but I really hope that someone at least gets a picture as to what someone's journey might be academically, because I feel like it's something that people should know and should hear. Again, I wanted this to be transparent. I wanted this to be honest. There are people who might need it. You know, they need to know what's to come, or people who are even enrolled now, you know, maybe they're facing a similar situation. Maybe not exactly the same. That'd be a little extreme, but maybe are having a little bit of confliction as to what it is that they want to do, or maybe they're conflicted with their grades, their classes. And I just think it's overall important for people to listen to someone else's story. Again, it may not be the same, but I hope someone gets something out of it. And again, I've been wanting to make this video for a really long time. I actually had plans to make this video my junior year. You know, I'm constantly reflecting, and I look back, and I've gone such a long way. And so I really hope you enjoyed listening to all this. I know it's not, I guess it did end in a happy way. I should add that I ended with a 3.014 GPA, and that's just because it's so hard to really come back from such a low GPA after 2016. You know, that's with getting Dean's List, that's with getting 3.5s, 3.3s every semester. Not every semester, but for the most part, right? And it's not easy, but I did it. Point is, if I can do it, and I'm telling you, I'm not smart, then you can do it too. 100%. Hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know, do the whole YouTube thing, comment, like, subscribe, whatever. But I really hope you get something out of this story. So thanks. Stay safe and stay blessed.